It's July 20th, 1969, and the location is Moon. Neil Armstrong lands on the Moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
But wait a second. But was it real? Because the US flag is waving, but there's no wind on the Moon. Or the photograph of Buzz Aldrin, taken by Neil Armstrong, raises another controversy, because it clearly demonstrates that Neil did not hold a camera in his hand. And why are there no stars in pictures of the NASA moon landings? There are many theories related to moon landing. I will answer each and every one. In 1961, 8 years before moon landing, JFK said,
"We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept."
In the coming years, over $10 billion of additional funding was allocated, and NASA launched an unmanned mission into space and moon every few months. And on the 16th of July, 1969, Apollo 11 was launched, and it took nearly 5 days to land on the Moon. Theory number 1, the US flag is waving in the wind, but there's no wind on the Moon. We all know Buzz Aldrin saluting the proudly waving American flag on the Moon remains one of the iconic images of the Apollo 11 mission, a declaration of US supremacy. And look again at the image, particularly along the top edge of the flag, and you will find the answer. A telescopic pole has been extended along the top in order to make the flag fly proudly. Yes, NASA really did think of everything. Moreover, all the wrinkles are there because it's literally been screwed up for 4 days en route to the Moon. Theory number 2, the photograph of Buzz Aldrin, taken by Neil Armstrong, raises another controversy because it clearly demonstrates that Neil did not hold a camera in his hand. Here the answer is that Neil was not holding a camera in his hand, and the camera was installed in the spacesuit itself, over the chest of the astronaut. Theory number 3, why are there no stars in pictures of the moon landings? Because if the image really was taken on the Moon, shouldn't the sky be filled with stars? And the answer is, this is in fact daytime on the Moon, so there are no stars, and both the astronauts and the lunar landscape are brightly lit by sun, and they are reflecting light, even today. If you turn on the flashlight of the phone, you won't be able to capture the stars in the sky. And the camera technology of 1969 is not like the one we see today. Theory number 4, the moon landing is fake because the shadows are scattered everywhere due to studio lighting. Skeptics argue that if the sun were the only source of light, why are the shadows not falling in the right direction and scattered everywhere? And therefore, it all must be the result of special Hollywood lighting. The problem with this theory is that although the sun is the main source of illumination on the Moon, it isn't the only source of illumination. Another source is the lunar ground, which reflects the sun's light. In the Apollo 11 pictures, the sunlight is being scattered or reflected off the ground. It took 400,000 NASA employees and contractors to put Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the Moon in 1969, and if the moon landing had been staged, the Soviet Union would have never accepted it. The Soviet government even made a statement that the moon landing was the third most significant event of the space age. The first was the launch of Sputnik, followed by Yuri Gagarin's travel to outer space, making him the first person to do so. Moreover, the mission was so real that the US government was prepared for the deaths of astronauts. US President Richard Nixon had an alternate speech ready in case the astronauts didn't make it to Earth, and it goes like, "These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most notable goal." And the biggest reason why humans have never been to the Moon again in the past 50 years is because of the high cost. Once the USA felt they had won the space race by being first to the Moon, the American government soon cut funding for the Apollo program, and funding for a renewed manned lunar mission never came back. Apollo 7 astronaut Walter Cunningham said during a 2015 congressional testimony, NASA's portion of the federal budget peaked at 4% in 1965, and for the past 40 years it has remained below 1%, and for the last 15 years it has been driving towards 0.4% of the federal budget. A report by NASA estimated that returning to the moon would cost about $150 billion. But don't worry, NASA announced that by 2025-2026, we humans will touch down on the moon again. And this time, the mission will include women and people of color.